In this sculpting follow-along tutorial, I will show you how to sculpt eyes in Blender. So in this video, we're going to be sculpting these eyes right here, and it's basically a cutout of the face with some eyebrows, and you can kind of see the nose and the eyes. And this tutorial is completely step-by-step and in real time. Now, if you have no experience with sculpting and you've never sculpted in Blender before, then I would recommend watching some complete beginner tutorial and just learn the very basics of sculpting. So learning some of the basic shortcut keys and the basic workflow. But as long as you have the main basics down, then this still is geared towards beginners, so you should be able to follow along with this video as long as you know the very basics of sculpting. Now, if sculpting in Blender is something that you're very interested in, something that you want to get better at, then I highly recommend checking out CG Boost's course, Master 3D Sculpting in Blender. I've reviewed the course myself, and I can highly recommend it for anyone wanting to improve their sculpting skills. It's a very detailed and thorough course on sculpting in Blender. And I do have an affiliate link to the sculpting course in the description, so if you purchase the course through my link, then I will earn a small commission, and that's a great way to help support me and this channel. The course is very well organized and is split up into short videos, so you can easily complete each step in your own time. Or you can jump to a certain video if you want to learn a certain part of sculpting or learn a specific tool or workflow. Now, this course is great for beginner and intermediate users. At the beginning of the course, they have an entire beginner section on sculpting in Blender where they teach you all the basics of sculpting in Blender. And then later on in the course, they also have 2 intermediate level projects. So the beginning of the course goes over everything you need to know to get started with sculpting in Blender. So it covers topics like shortcut keys, navigation, and some different recommended settings in Blender's user preferences. The course also covers the sculpting interface and the sculpting tools and many of the brushes and some different workflows such as the remesh and Dyntopo workflows. And the course goes over many more sculpting tools like the multi-resolution modifier, the masking brush, and many other settings. The course also contains some beginner exercises, such as sculpting an owl character, a tree stump, and an alien character. Now, the second part of this course is the complete creation process on how to create this cute creature character. So this part covers how to sculpt the cute creature character. It goes over retopology, adding sculpting details, and adding fur to the character. It also covers how to model the character's backpack, making a clay shader to add to your sculpt, and how to use vertex colors to color your sculpts. And then the third part of this course is also a complete creation process on how to create this epic dragon creature. And this part also goes over sculpting, adding more details, and adding materials, posing, and lighting and rendering. So again, if you're interested in purchasing the course, then you can check it out with my affiliate link in the description. And if you purchase the course through my link, then I'll earn a small commission, and that's a great way to help support this channel. Now, in this tutorial, I am going to be using a drawing tablet for the sculpting, and I would definitely recommend using a drawing tablet if you're able to. And I'm going to be using my Huion screen drawing tablet, so it's a tablet that I can actually draw on the screen surface, but you definitely don't need something that fancy. Even if you can just use one of those smaller pad tablets, that's going to be way better than sculpting with a mouse. And I will have some Amazon links in the description to some different tablets that I recommend, and those are affiliate links, so if you purchase something through those links, that'll help me out, but with no extra cost to you. And then before you start the sculpting, I would recommend getting some different eye reference images because using reference images are really helpful for any artwork creation. So if you have a multi-monitor setup like I have, then you can get some different reference images and put them on the screen, and you can look back at them while you're sculpting. Or if you have a phone or a tablet, you could set that up with some reference images, or maybe you have some drawing anatomy book, you could set that up for the sculpting. But during the video, I will also bring up some reference images to help you with the sculpting. Alright, so here I am in a new scene in Blender, and I'm just going to start by deleting everything. I'll press Shift A, and we're going to add a cube, because I basically want to add an object which is going to have the eyebrows and the eyes and kind of the tip of the nose. So I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to scale this out on the x-axis, and I'll also scale it up on the z-axis. And then I could also scale it in on the y-axis a bit, and I'll bring it down a little bit more. more. So something like that. All right, so just a basic object like that is pretty good. And then before we actually sculpt this, I just want to press Control A and I want to hit all transforms just to make sure we don't have any errors while we're sculpting. So I can now click right here to go to the sculpting workspace, or if you don't have the sculpting workspace, you can also just click right here and you can go to the sculpt mode. I'm going to go over to the sculpting workspace, and I like the sculpting workspace because it has the brushes here and some other settings up here. Now I'm actually not going to be using the side properties here, so I'm just going to get rid of it just so we have a bit more screen space. So what I'm going to do is click right here when the little crosshair appears. I can click, drag down, and then let go, and then the same thing right here. So click in the corner, drag over, and then let go. And then if I click right up here on this arrow on the viewport shading, I'm going to choose a matte cap, and I've added in my own matte caps and downloaded some online, so you're not going to see all of these, but one which is built into Blender is this one here, and I really like this one for sculpting. It's the clay brown one. Now when I sculpt on one side, I want it to affect the other side, so we're going to click right here on this X to turn on the X symmetry. And then also I want it to add geometry as we sculpt, so I'm also going to turn on the Dyne Topo setting. I'll click on this and then click on OK, and then on the Dyne Topo setting on the detail size, I'm going to go with 3, but if 3 is too much detail for your computer and if it's acting kind of laggy while you're sculpting, you could turn it up. So if it's a bigger number, there will actually be less detail, and if it's a smaller number, there's going to be more detail. Now also, if you click right here, this is the clay strips brush. This is my favorite brush, and it's the main one that I'm going to be using for the sculpting. And also, now that we have the clay strips brush selected, I want to click here on brush, and I'm going to go right down here, and there's some more settings, so I need to move my mouse down, and I'm going to turn on the accumulate and the front faces only. The accumulate is going to continue to add more and more clay as we sculpt, even if we sculpt over the same area, and then the front faces only will make sure that it's only sculpting on the front of the faces. So it won't sculpt the faces if we're like back here trying to sculpt the back of the face. And then also this little widget here, I already have turned this off because I just don't really use it. You could totally use it if you want to, but I'm going to turn that off just to get it out of the way. And then there is one more thing that I want to do. If I press the N key to open up the side panel, I want to go right here to view, and right here on the focal length, I like to turn this up to like an 80 or a 90, so I'm going to turn it up to 90, and this is going to zoom in the focal length so things look a bit more flat, and I think it's actually better for sculpting to turn that up a bit. Alright, let's get started with the sculpting. So I'm going to click right over here to go to the crease brush, and I'm first just going to go along here, and I'm going to sculpt in a line there. You can also make your brush smaller with the F key, or also right here you can just drag this down to bring the radius down, and I'm going to add a line in the center. So this is where the center of the eyes are going to be, and this is just kind of as a reference point to kind of help us with the proportions. And then also I'm going to draw another line kind of here in the center, and this is just to help us with the proportions. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to go around here in circles, and I'm going to actually kind of carve in some little circles here. And again, this is kind of just for proportions. And then I'm going to make 2 more ovals on each side, and these are where the eyes are actually going to be. And I want these to be about the same size. So this one could actually be a little bit smaller, and this totally doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just trying to get it close. So why I'm doing this is because roughly the size of the eye, or the visible eye that you can see, there is about the same space in between each eye. So we have the ending of one eye, then we have the other eye, and then in the middle there's about one eye size in between. That's just a general guideline to follow when you are drawing or sculpting eyes. And also, if you haven't saved the Blender file already, you can go File, and then you can click on Save As and just make sure you save the Blender file. So I've just saved the Blender file, and so now as I'm working on the project, I'll just press Ctrl S, and that's going to save the file. So I now want to bring out the eyebrow, because the eyebrow actually comes out quite a bit. You can see right here with the reference images, the eyebrow really does come out quite a bit. So I'm going to go here to the clay strips brush, and I'm going to start just by going back and forth, and I'm going to really press down hard. And because I'm using a drawing tablet, I have the pen pressure, so that way when I press down harder, it's going to add more clay. So I'm going to go along here and really bring that out, because the eyebrow really does come out. And then I'm also going to bring this out a little bit too, because this is kind of where the nose starts to come out. Alright, now the human face is very round. There's really not any flat area. It is very round. And so because it's round, right now if I go here to the side, you can see this is quite flat, but like where the nose comes out, it comes out even farther. And then kind of here on the side of the head, it kind of goes back back in. So I actually want to make that shape of the face. So I'm going to hit the G key to go to the grab brush. You can also click right here. I'll press the F key to make my brush bigger, and then I'm going to go to the top of the sculpt, and I'm just going to kind of tap, and I'm going to zoom out quite a bit so that we can grab more of the sculpt, and I'm just going to tap along here and kind of bring that out. I can also go down here to the bottom and do the same thing because the face is very round, so we want the front here to be coming out, and then the back here, this is going to go a bit back in. And I can kind of push this out, so I want the face to be pretty round. So you can see right here kind of where the center of the nose is, that is coming out quite a bit, and then it rounds here on the side. All right, now I also want to bring out the nose, so I'm going to go back here to the clay strips brush, and I'm going to go along here, just kind of adding layers of clay, and we're just going to bring out the nose. I'm not going to do the entire nose, but I'm just going to make the basic shape of the nose because it is near the eyes. And I will go down here, and a good way to think about the shape of the nose is kind of like a triangle. So the bottom of the nose kind of is like a triangle. So if you go along here like a triangle shape, the nose would obviously kind of end all the way down here. I'm not going to sculpt all the nose, but you can kind of think of the nose as being kind of like a triangle shape, and then it's kind of at its highest point here. I can also hit the G key to go back to the grab brush, and I can just kind of pull this around if I need to move anything around. So I think I will just kind of pull the nose out so it's coming out a bit more. I'm also going to go down here to kind of the bottom of the nose, and I will just kind of bring this out so it's a little bit bigger, just like that. Just kind of tapping along there, making that a little bit bigger. All right, now right in here, kind of where the nose transitions over to where the eye is, I'm going to go here back to the clay strips brush, and I'm going to hold down the control key and just kind of push in layers of clay. Holding down the control key is going to push the clay in, whereas when you sculpt normally, it's going to bring the clay out. But if you hold down the control key, that'll push the clay in. And I'm going to go back along here and kind of push this in on the side of the nose, just kind of pushing that in a little bit, kind of to flatten it. And then you can also hold down the shift key. That'll go to the smooth brush, and I'm just gonna smooth that out, just kind of lightly pressing down just to kind of smooth that, and then holding down the control key again, we're gonna push that in a little bit, and then hold down the shift key and just lightly smooth it out. And I could also hold down the shift key and just smooth that out a little bit as well. All right, so now that that's done, let's start to carve out where the eyes are. So I'm gonna go to the clay strips brush, and I'm going to hold down the control key, and I'm going to start to go along here and just kind of push in where the eyes are. Now the eyes are not just a circular shape, they actually have a specific shape. So they kind of come up here, then they kind of go over, and then they go back down. And this is the top eyelid. The bottom eyelid is a bit different. So we're going to start by just kind of making the basic forms. So we're going to go up and then over and then down. So there's kind of like 3 different planes. Now here on the bottom, there's basically like 2 different planes. It goes down a little bit, but the bottom is much more flat, whereas the top is much more round. But the bottom definitely does round over a bit. So I'm just going along here, and also right here in the center, I can just kind of push harder, just push that all in there and kind of bring the eye back. You can also go around in circles, and I'm holding down the control key as I press down on the tablet to push in the clay there. You can kind of go over here to the side now that this has been pushed in a little bit, kind of push that all in there. And then kind of go here to the bottom, push that in as well, and then go over to this side and push that in as well. And I do want to push it in quite a bit, so I'm going to actually push a lot more. This is kind of rough, so I'm going to hold down the shift key and go around in circles and lightly kind of smooth that all out. Now you can see right down here, this is kind of coming down a bit, and I don't really want that. So I will hit G for the grab brush, and I'm going to just kind of tap and kind of reshape this. So I actually want to bring this in a little bit, and bring this in a little bit and kind of bring it up a little bit, because I want here and here to be pretty level. And then also if I kind of go here to the top or the bottom, again, the face is round, but also the eye is very round. The eye is pretty much a sphere. So what I want to do is go here to the bottom, and I want to just kind of tap here and kind of push out with the grab brush, because the eyelids are going to go around the eye. We don't want it to be flat. We want it to be very round. So then you can also do the same thing here on the top. So go to top view, and you can just kind of push this out so that it is very round. You can also kind of push it up. You can also go here to side view and kind of do the same thing. All right, so that is better. So let's go back to the clay strips brush, and I'm going to go along here now and just continue to push this in because it's not really going in enough. And actually we are going to be adding a different eye object. So we're actually going to be adding a sphere, because a sphere is already very round, and we'll be adding a different object for the actual eyeball. But for now, I'm just kind of carving away that kind of cave there in the eye socket, and then holding down the shift key, I'm just going to smooth it out a little bit. Also right here, you can see this is pretty low poly, so I might just go along here and just kind of add like a layer of clay, just lightly pressing down and then holding down the shift key. I can just kind of smooth that out there. All right, so if I now go right over to this area, there's kind of an area here which kind of goes back in a bit. So I'm going to hold down the control key and kind of push in the clay to kind of bring in that area there, and then hold down the shift key and smooth that out a bit. All right, just kind of move around and look at your sculpt from different angles. So right up here, we have the eyebrow. And then right here, we kind of have this slant, which is kind of going down. There's basically a slant which goes down here. And then right here, this is the actual eyelid. And so there's usually a little crease right here where the slant actually meets the eyelid. So I want to sculpt in a little crease there. So to do that, let's go to the crease brush, and I can just go along here and start to crease that in. And then I want to make the strength bigger. So I'm just going to drag the strength up here, and then I'm going to go along here, kind of zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to start to crease this in, and then going down, and then over here we want to do the same thing, so go down there. So let's just crease that in a bit more, keep on creasing that in. And then what I also want to do is go here to the clay strips brush, and I want to kind of define that shape a bit better. So what I'm first going to do is hold down the shift key and kind of press actually a little bit harder to kind of smooth that out and kind of flatten that. And then I can kind of go along here and add a bit more clay just to kind of bring that out. And also right up here, I want to bring that out a little bit further. So where the eyebrow is, I'm going to bring that out even farther. So where the eyebrow is right here, it's coming out the most. And then there's this slant which kind of goes back. So I'm going along here, adding a bit more clay, and then holding down the shift key, I'm going to go back and smooth that out. Also right up here, I might just go along here and add a bit more clay just to really pop this out. So I'm just pushing down pretty hard, and then holding down the shift key, I can smooth that out. I can also hold down the shift key here and press a little bit harder, and you can see I'm kind of making a flat plane kind of right there. So if you want to hold down the shift key, kind of press down a bit harder, kind of flatten that out there. All right, so now if I zoom in here to the eyelid, I basically want there to be kind of a little tip where the eyelid is. So I'm going to go right here to the crease brush. I'll make my brush a little bit bigger, so you can press the F key to make your brush bigger or drag the radius up. And then normally when you sculpt with the crease brush, if I like crease right here, I do actually want to crease this in a little bit more. Normally when you crease, it's going to go back in. So I'm going to hold down the control key instead. So when I hold down the control key, it's going to do the opposite of the crease. So it'll crease it, but it'll crease it out instead of pushing it back in. And then you can also hold down the shift key, smooth that out a bit, and then right over here, let's crease that as well. So hold down the control key, and then we'll do the same thing here. So I'm just going to crease that there and over here as well. If you want to go here along the side of it and hold down the shift key to smooth, you can kind of smooth that out. All right, so now that we've sculpted the general shape, this would be a good time to add the eye object. So I'm actually going to just click right back here to go to the layout. So I'm going to add a new object by pressing Shift A. Let's go to Mesh, and I'm going to add a UV sphere. So once I've added the sphere, I can hit the Tab key to go into edit mode, and I'll hit G to grab, bring this over here, and kind of bring it over here. I can also scale it down with the S key, and then I want to rotate it over. So I'll hit R to rotate. Let's rotate it on the X axis, and I can type in 90 and enter. So it's rotated over. And then I can bring it over and go here to the side, kind of bring it back. So I'm going to scale this up a bit more, kind of bring it over. And then I'm going to be modeling a very basic like pupil, just so that we can see where the pupil is. But before we do that, I do want to click right over here to go to the modifier properties. Let's click on add modifier, and under generate, we're going to add a mirror modifier. So because I moved this object over in edit mode, the origin point was still in the center. And so it's going to mirror the mirror in the center of the origin. Now, if for some reason you move this over in object mode, the mirror probably won't be in the center. So what you can do to fix that is use these mirror object feature right here. And to use the mirror object feature, you can click on the eyedropper, and then you can select the sculpt. Now it's going to mirror from the center of that object. So you can see I can move this around in object mode, and it's going to ignore the origin point for the mirror. It's just going to center the mirror depending on where this object is. So I'm going to click on the eye here, and I'm going to delete this though, because I have the origin point in the center. So I'm just going to, in edit mode, move the mesh around, and that way the origin is still in the center, and so it'll mirror over correctly. So I'm now going to go back into edit mode, and I just want to model a very basic pupil. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and then select that loop of vertices there, and then I can double tap the G key to activate the edge slide, and I want to bring it in a little bit, and I'll bring it about there. Then I can hold down the Alt key and select that loop of vertices, double tap the G key, and I can bring that back and bring it really close. And then I'm going to hold down the Shift and Alt key and select that loop of vertices there, and then just hold down the Shift key and select that center one there. So I now want to bring this out. So I'll hit G to grab, and I want to bring this out on the y-axis, and I can scale it up a little bit. And then if I go back to object mode, using the object context menu, I can shade the object smooth. Now because we shaded it smooth, you can't really see the actual shape of the pupil, so I'm going to go back to edit mode, and I will press Ctrl R to add a loop cut. I'm going to click here and then drag this pretty close and then click there. And then if I go back to object mode, you can actually see the shape of the pupil a bit better. And I'm going to go back into edit mode, and I'm also going to hold down the Alt key and just select that loop there. And then I can double tap the G key and bring it in just a little bit so it's a little bit more circular. I'm also going to press Ctrl R again to add another loop cut. And this one I'm going to click here and then drag over and then click there. So if I go back to object mode, you can see that's a bit sharper now. And then also, just to make this a little bit more smooth, I'm going to press Ctrl 2. That is going to add the subdivision surface modifier so it's a bit more smooth. Now you can see there is a little bit of stretching here with the subsurf modifier. So if I go into edit mode, what I want to do is just click on the center vertex right there, and I can press X, and then let's just delete the vertices. And then I want to hold down the Alt key and select that loop of vertices right there, and I'll press the F key to fill a face. Now you can see if I tab to go back to object mode, it is stretching a little bit still. So to fix this, I can press the I key. The I key is going to inset the face, and I can bring that down, make it a bit smaller, kind of scale that down. And then also right over here on the subdivision surface modifier, I don't really need 2 levels, so I'm going to turn this down just to 1, and I can go back to object mode, and you can see now we have just a basic eye shape. And then I want to make sure I get the size of the eye correct, and I do think it is a little bit small. So if I press 1 on the numpad, that's going to go to front view. I can go into edit mode, and I will just select the entire mesh. And I want to scale the entire mesh up a little bit, and then kind of bring it over a little bit right there. And then I can also bring it back a little bit more. But we are going to be shaping the eyelids to the eye. I just want to kind of get it to the correct spot. I'm also going to hold down the Alt key and select that loop there, and then hold down the Shift and Alt key and select these other loops here. So we have all those loops selected, and I'm going to scale them all down just a little bit because I do think they're a little bit big. I could also press Ctrl R to add a loop cut here, and I can drop that right there in the center, and I can bring it out a bit on the y-axis so it comes a bit forward, just like that. Alright, so let's go back to object mode, and I'm going to select the sculpt again, and then I can click right back here to go to the sculpting workspace. And I want to turn the Dyn Topo back on, so click on this, and then click on OK to turn on the Dyn Topo. So it adds geometry as we sculpt. So I'm now going to hit the G key to go to the grab brush, and I want to go down here to the bottom, or also go here to the top, and I want to rotate the eyelids around the eye, so they're more circular. So I'm just going to tap along here and tap along here, and I want to bring the eyelids around the eye. So you can go to here to the bottom, kind of shape that so that it's pretty even around the eyelid. Also go here to the top. I need to bring this out a bit, and then right here I need to push this in a bit. So we're just shaping that around the eye, kind of smoothing out any areas that are a bit of a weird shape. And then also right here where the end of the eye is, I want to push this in even more. So I'm going to push that in a bit more, kind of bring it back. And also right over here on this side, I will kind of push this in a little bit more. And then something else to notice about the proportions is that usually the pupil is going to be hidden a little bit by the top eyelid. Usually you can see the bottom of the pupil like this, but then usually the top of the pupil is hidden just a little bit by the eyelid. Of course, it depends on where the person is looking and how open their eyes are, but that's just kind of a general rule as well. And then right over here on this side, I want to push this up a little bit and push it back a little bit. And then this part right here, I do want to bring it down just a little bit. And remember to zoom out and look around at your sculpt at lots of different angles. All right, so I now want to sharpen up the eyelids a bit more. So I'm going to go back to the crease brush, and I can hold down the Control key, and I'm just going to crease this out a little bit just to sharpen it a bit more. I also might turn the strength down a little bit so it's not quite as strong. Kind of crease that, and then hold down the Shift key and smooth this out. So I'm holding down the Control key, creasing that out, and then holding down the Shift key, you can kind of smooth out some areas that need to be a bit smoother. You can also go right here. I'm going to crease this in. So this is kind of on the outer side of the eye where the two eyelids meet, and I want to make a nice crease there, and hold down the Control key, kind of crease that and sharpen it a bit. Sharpen this as well, and then hold down the Shift key. I want to smooth out that little lip right there. And then also right here where this crease is, I do want to crease that in a bit more. So I'm actually just going to crease it in a bit more and kind of round it a bit more so it's a little bit better shape. And then you can also kind of look down on the bottom looking up, and lightly smooth that ridge there. Now if I look here on the side, I actually want to bring out this top part even more. So I'm going to go here to the top and I'm going to use the grab brush. So here's the grab brush. You can also hit the G key and just kind of push this out even more, just so that where the eyebrows are, it's kind of coming out a little bit more. And then I'm going to go here to the clay strips brush again, and I'm going to hold down the control key and kind of push that in a bit, just to kind of make this a bit more flat. I could also go along here and add a bit more clay here to kind of push this out where the eyebrow is going to be, and then hold down the shift key and smooth that out there. You can also hold down the shift key and smooth out really hard, and that's gonna kind of flatten that area. So I'm kind of smoothing that out. So now you can see there's kind of like this area here, and then it kind of comes down there. And another thing I'm going to do just to define that shape a bit better is I'm going to lightly go along here and add a strip of clay on this area. And this is kind of right before that little crease there. And this is going to pop it out a bit. So I'm going to go along here and just lightly add a bit of clay there, and then hold down the shift key and smooth it out a lot. So make it pretty smooth, but this is going to kind of pop out that shape there, so that it kind of goes back in even more. And I think I might just smooth it out and crease it a bit more. So I'll go to the crease brush and I'm just going to go along here and crease that in a little bit more, and then hold down the shift key and very lightly smooth in the crease there, and then lightly, very lightly kind of smooth it out. And if I go back to the grab brush, kind of looking here on the top, I want to bring the nose out a little bit more. So let's bring that out, maybe bring out the eyebrows a little bit more. And then also right down here, the cheekbone kind of starts right here. And I know the cheekbone isn't really a part of the eye, but I do just want to add that. So I'm going to kind of push this out a little bit just to push out the cheekbone. And I'm also going to go to the clay strips brush, and I'm going to go along here and add a bit of clay just to start to show the shape of the cheekbone. So just going along here, adding in layers of clay. You can also go down here to the bottom and add a bit of clay here, and then hold down the shift key, kind of flatten that bottom area. Go up here to the front, hold down the shift key, flatten that out a little bit. And maybe right here, I'm going to add a bit more clay, and then hold down the shift key, smooth that out. Also right here on the side, you can see the vertices is making it look a little bit weird. You can see it's kind of low quality there. So I'm going to go along here, add a bit of clay, and then press down really hard and just kind of smooth that out there. Also right here on the bottom of the nose, I might as well kind of smooth it out a little bit more. Now I do want to define the shape of the nose just a little bit more. So I'm going to go to the crease brush, and I'm going to hold down the control key and add a tiny little crease here, kind of where the nose is, where that ridge of the nose is, and then hold down the shift key, smooth that out a little bit so that the nose is a little bit sharp right there. But I just want to define the shape a bit better. Here on the side as well, I might just define that shape a bit better by holding down the control key and creasing it out. And here as well, I might just do that a little bit just to define that shape a bit better. Now also right down here, I'm going to go to the grab brush, and I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to tap and kind of push this down. And then if I go here to the bottom, I'm going to just kind of tap and push that out a little bit more. So this is kind of where the cheeks are. So I'm going to bring that out a little bit and bring it down a little bit. I do want to define this a little bit better. So I want to show the bottom shape of that eyelid. So I'm going to go to the crease brush, and I want to crease this in a little bit so that you can almost see the shape of the eye. Because right now there isn't very much form here. It is pretty smooth. So I'm going to go along here, and I'm just going to add a subtle crease. I don't want to overdo it, because if I overdo it, then it looks like this person stayed up all night or something. They're really tired, It's kind of like a cartoony bags under the eyes, So I definitely don't want to overdo it. I don't want to make these giant bags under the eyes. So I'm just going to hit Control Z to kind of undo that a little bit. So I'm just going to go along here and just lightly add a little bit of a crease, and then hold down the shift key and kind of smooth that out. But now it's kind of appearing as though this part of the eyelid is going along the eye, kind of going around the eye. I also want to go up here to the clay strips brush, and I want to push it back in a little bit. So I'm just going to go along here and lightly push this in so it kind of goes back a bit more. All right, also up here, kind of going down, pushing that in a little bit to define that shape a bit better, and then hold down the shift key, go back along there and smooth that out there. And that is looking a lot better. You can also go to the clay strips brush. You can kind of add very subtle layers of clay to kind of push that out, and then hold down the shift key, and smooth it out a little bit. And then if you need to, you can go back to the grab brush and you can kind of shape this a little bit more towards the eye. I think it is pretty good, but there is kind of a big gap there. So I want to make that gap just a little bit smaller, and I want it to be pretty even all around. So I'm just going to push that in so it's a bit closer to the eye, like that. Also right up here, just push that in a little bit. All right, now I also want to add a few more creases down here. So I'm going to go to the crease brush and I'm going to start right up here. I'm going to add a subtle crease kind of along here. It's almost like a wrinkle in the skin, adding a little crease. I don't want it to be too strong. So you might just want to hold down the shift key and smooth it out just a little bit after you add it, but just a little crease there. And then also right here, I want to add another little crease to kind of define the shape of the nose. So I might zoom out a little bit and then just crease that in, and then hold down the shift key and smooth it out just a little bit. But I'm just going to go along here and kind of add another little crease, just a subtle crease. I think I might make my brush a bit smaller, make my crease brush smaller and add a tiny little crease there. And then hold down the shift key and smooth it out just a little bit. And right over here, I will add just a little crease right there. And also right here, I'm going to add another very subtle crease, just kind of going along there, and then smooth it out a little bit. And also right up here, I'm going to add a tiny little crease. Sometimes there is like a very subtle crease, but I'm going to smooth it out a lot. All right, so there's still one really important part which we haven't added yet, and that is basically like that little tear duct, which is right here in the center of the eyes. So we're going to add that right here. So I'm going to go to the crease brush, and I'm going to go along here and start to kind of crease that in, and definitely look at reference images to get the shape right. But I'm going to go along here and just kind of crease in a little circle, and then I'm going to crease this in and kind of have it go here so that it's touching the eye. So just crease that in, go around, and then you can hold down the shift key and smooth it out a little bit. And you can see because we creased that in, we now have that little part there which kind of looks like it's popping out, and then the eyelids actually kind of go around it. You can see there in those images, the eyelid actually does go around it, so the eyelid continues. So I'm going to go along here with the crease brush, holding down the control key, and I'm going to continue over that crease so that it kind of goes around here, and then they kind of connect. They don't fully connect, but they kind of go down here. So I'm just going to have the crease go farther. So this crease here, it's going to go along and then kind of go along that little spot there, that tear duct. And if I kind of zoom out here, look farther away, I think that is actually a little bit too big. So if I go to the grab brush, I can kind of push this back in, push it a little bit more towards the eye so that it is a bit smaller. And then if you wanted to bring out the shape of it a little bit more, you could go to the clay strips brush and zoom in pretty close. And you can kind of go around in circles and kind of just round it a bit, and then hold down the shift key and smooth it out just a little bit. Now, another small detail is that there is kind of a little flat part here before it goes over. So I'm going to go to the grab brush. I'm going to bring this back a bit, and I will kind of bring this up a little bit. I'm also going to zoom out and kind of push it a little bit more towards the edge of the eye and bring that back a little bit. And right up here, if I go to the top, I'm going to make my brush a bit bigger by pressing the F key. And I'm going to push that in a little bit so it's a bit closer to the eye. So now you can see it goes up and then it kind of goes over just a little bit. I also think I want to bring the entire thing down. So just slightly tapping and pushing that down there. All right, so this is really starting to look like an eye and we are almost done. Something that I want to add though is I want to just add a very subtle texture for the eyebrows. So I'm going to go here to the draw brush, and the draw brush kind of just draws a nice little circular shape. And I'm going to make my brush a bit smaller. Of course, this is totally optional. You don't have to do this. If you just want to sculpt the eye, you can. But I think this is really nice just to kind of show the other forms of the face. So I'm going to go along here, and I'm not going to do anything too fancy. And if you were going for a very realistic character, then you would probably want to use a particle system instead of sculpting it. But because this is a sculpt, I'm just going to sculpt in some little details, kind of like a texture for the eyebrows. Just going along here, let's also have this kind of go down, and I'll have this go down a bit farther, maybe push down a bit harder to kind of bring that out a little bit more. All right, kind of zoom out here, see how that is looking. And I think I want to shape that a little bit more. So I'm actually going to go to the grab brush, and I'm going to push this out a little bit just to kind of bring it up. And then also right here on the top, I might just kind of go along here and just kind of fix some of this as well. And right here, I might just add a bit more clay so that that's a bit more flat. So I'm going to add a bit more clay here, and then hold down the shift key, go around in circles and kind of smooth that out. And also right here on the back, like if you wanted to, you could kind of go along here and just add a small layer of clay and then hold down the shift key and smooth it out just to make the presentation a little bit nicer. Totally optional though. And this is going to add a lot more geometry to the object because we're kind of smoothing that out and adding more geometry here. So I'm just adding a little strip of clay with the clay strips brush, like along there. And then you can just hold down the shift key and just lightly smooth that out, just so it's a little bit nicer. Also right in here, I could kind of go along and add a bit more. But at this point, we are pretty much done. So I'll just do a little bit more fiddling around just to kind of finish this up and make it look a bit nice. All right, and I'm going to call this finished. So I've just kind of gone around here, kind of smoothed out the back a bit, added a bit more geometry here, kind of just smoothed things out. And I'm going to call this done. So I'm going to go back here to the layout. And I will save this again. So right here at the end of the video, I am going to show you how I render out a preview image of the sculpt. So what I'm going to do is select the sculpt in object mode, and using the object context menu, I'm going to shade it smooth. Now I also want to add a camera, so I'll press Shift A. Let's go here and add a camera, and then I can move to wherever I want the camera to be, and I can press Control Alt Numpad 0. That is going to bring the camera to where we are. And also with the camera selected, you can click right over here on the object data properties, and when we were sculpting, I turned the focal length up, and I'm going to turn the focal length up for the camera as well. So I'm going to turn the focal length up to 90 because I like that. And then I can also press G to grab. I can double tap the Z key to bring it in and out, and I can press the G key just to kind of move this around. And I just want to find a nice position for the camera, so I could maybe bring it down here if I like that a bit better. And actually, let me try a focal length of 80. I think I might like a focal length of 80 a little bit better. And then what I'm also going to do is click right up here to go to the shading, and you can choose some different matte caps. So right here on the matte cap, I've added in my own matte caps, and I've also downloaded some matte caps and added them in. But this matte cap here, this is the matte cap that I sculpted with, and this one is built into Blender. So I like this one, so I'm going to use this one. And then once I've changed that matte cap, there's a few other settings I can do just to make the image look nicer. So one thing I'm going to do is turn on the shadow, and I can also turn the shadow up to make it a bit darker. And then if I click here on the gear, I can rotate the light direction around, and I can kind of make the shadow wherever I want. And I can also kind of change the amount of shadow by changing this value here, and also the sharpness of the edge of the shadow. So if I turn this bottom value up here, you can see now the shadow is a bit sharper. So I think I will make it just a little bit sharper, something like that. And then I can also click on the cavity right here, and this is kind of going to add like an ambient occlusion. So the creases, the parts of the mesh which are going back in, it's going to make that a bit darker, and then the parts which are coming out are going to be a bit lighter. And also right here on the type, I'm going to change it to both instead. So it's using the world and screen. And then I have the ridge and the valley. I can make those stronger or less strong. And also here I have the ridge and the valley of the screen space. And then also to get rid of the grid, if you click right here, you can turn off the grid. But what I'm actually going to do right here on the viewport overlays is I'm just going to click on this button right here just to hide the viewport overlays. Now to actually get a screenshot of this, you can click here on view, and then you can click on viewport render image, or you can just press F10, and F10 will take a screenshot of that. And it's going to screenshot wherever you are. So if I hit the escape key, if I just like rotate over here and then hit F10, it's going to take a screenshot of that. Or if I'm in the camera view and I press F10, it's going to take a screenshot of the camera. And then also you can change the color management. So if you go right here to the render properties, you can open up the color management right here, and I'm going to set the view transform to filmic, and the look here I will set to high contrast. So then the camera view, I can press F10 again, and that's going to take a screenshot. So then to save this, you can click on image, and you can click on save as. And so that is it. That is how to sculpt eyes in Blender. So I hope you were easily able to follow along, and thank you so much for watching. And if you'd like to watch more of my sculpting tutorials, then definitely check out my sculpting tutorial playlist with the link in the description. And as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, if sculpting in Blender is something that you really want to get better at, then I'd highly recommend CG Boost's course, Master 3D Sculpting in Blender. I've reviewed the course myself, and I can highly recommend it. It's a very detailed and thorough course on sculpting in Blender, and it will really help to push your sculpting skills to the next level. And if you purchase the course through my affiliate link, then I will earn a small commission, and that's a great way to help support this channel. But I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you for watching.